Hello and welcome to episode 13, and we're going to look today at antennas, specifically antennas for vehicles and perhaps slightly weird ones. And I figured there's so much sort of folklore about antennas and which ones are good and which ones are bad that I thought it'd be easier to actually look at what actually happens with a typical antenna. And I've conjured up a sort of test rig. Now, this rig is really basic. So what I've done is there's a metal plate here, and on one side of it I've clamped a typical car accessory mount. So it needs the antenna to have a PL259 plug on it. So the antenna's got the male pin, and it's very difficult unless you've got a mag mount to stick them in the middle of the roof. So loads of people end up with sticking them on the edges of their car. So I thought this was a good simulation. So I've got a ground plane sort of. It's a bit of a rubbish one. It's quite small, certainly small for HF, but probably just about okay for VHF and UHF. And we've got the facility to screw in some antennas. Now, I mean, we could do all the usual stuff, and we could say, oh yes, I can hear this and I can hear that, and it's really good, and the VSWR is blah blah blah. Well, that doesn't really tell us very much. So what I've actually also got is an analyzer. And on the analyzer screen, what I've actually got is the VHF spectrum. I've actually put in 136 through to 174. So that's the typical sort of range of the radios you buy, isn't it? And the next job is to use the analyzer to find out how good this antenna is. Now, I think, because it doesn't have any labels on it, that this is supposed to be a 2-meter antenna. So that's 19 inches for a quarter wave. That's obviously shorter. So is that a helically wound one inside? You know, a bit like a rubber duck, and in this particular case it's in a little fiberglass tube. I honestly don't know. But we can plug it in the analyzer, and hopefully the analyzer will tell us what it is. Okay, what I've done now is switch the analyzer to that same 136 to 174 band. So this little box here just allows me to connect a device that I want to test, and all I need to do is connect this, which goes to that antenna there, and when I screw it in, we've got a notch appear. Now that notch on the screen is roughly, if I move that little cursor there, 142.97 on this particular display. So that's not very accurate, so let's just go in and have a little bit later. So what I'll do, I'll put the start frequency in at 140 meg, and I'll put the end frequency in at 150. That's much more narrow. Okay. So that's our little 10 meg slice. This particular antenna appears to be resonant at about 142, 143. Now, if we go up a bit, by the time we get to the amateur band, which is here at 144, 146, it's actually not much cop look. So in actual fact, 145.5, where all the repeaters and things are, it's hardly resonant at that frequency at all. And the same thing, if we go down, we don't have to go very far, 140, before it starts to become just a bit of wire. Well, that's not very useful, and what it really means is it's not a particularly brilliant antenna, I suppose. Let's go back to that slightly wider span. Let's go down as far as the 136 again, and let's go up this time to 450 megahertz. Now that's a pretty strange display, and here on the screen that is our just wind it down a little bit, there we are. So there's our 140 to 143 meg dip, and if we put a hand on the antenna, look, you can see just as something gets close to it, the actual antenna, the resonant frequency changes, and I can, That's why you shouldn't put your hands on antennas, because they stop being good antennas. But then we get a bit of peace and quiet. But let's move up here. We go all the way through 200s, and then we start to get some little dips. Well, there's a little dip there, a little bit of resonance at 305, but then we've got quite a steep one here. Now, that actually seems to tune to 323, which is a bit weird. Let's stretch this out a bit further. We've got loads of little strange peaks now. So again, let's have a look and see where these things are. That's our low one. But once we get up to here, we have another peak at 438. The level of that makes me look and wonder, this isn't a VHF antenna at all. It's actually a UHF antenna. Or at least it certainly seems to be performing like one. It's got lots of resonance peaks down here, and those ones are deeper. So in actual fact, I mean, we've got, wow, 438. It's called a. It's resonant again at 419. Well, that's a rather bizarre antenna, isn't it? So in actual fact, it's resonant in the 2 meter band, but it's also resonant at the UHF band, and it looks like the match at UHF is a bit better. Okay, so what else can we do with things like this? Well, we can look at all sorts of different antennas. We could swap that one out for something else. So I mean, maybe let's try it with something else that's weird and wonderful and see what happens. Let's swap this. There we go. So that's the antenna gone. I found this very strange. It's an HH9000 antenna. I don't know what that is, to be honest. Now, clearly we've got some sort of loading coil in the bottom here, then a whip, then we've got another coil in the middle, then we've got yet another length of rod and a final. Oh, I mean, it's quite a closely wound coil here, and then it goes to a wider one and then a shorter one. So I really don't know, and I'm guessing this end is yeah, it is. There's a little tiny adjustment on the top, but it's quite a small one. So you're not going to be able to see the top of this when I plug it in, but I mean, let's see if I can get it in here. I'm going to have to move that slightly because there's an obstacle above, but let's give it a go and see what happens. Well, it's way out of the picture. What have we got? Well, looking at the screen, we have a large number of peaks. We've got certainly got a peak up here at 433. So, I mean, I was actually thinking this might be an HF antenna, but I don't think it is. There's a very deep one here. Now that's at 433. We've got some, there's quite a few more. There's a bit of a response. It's not as deep as the other one at 410, so I'm assuming that we've definitely got a 433. We've got a bit of 313. That's no use to anybody, is it? We have some form of resonance about 141, so that's a bit of a 2 meter, but weirdly, so this antenna's also got a resonance at 91 megs. If I'd have had to guess by looking at the display, I would have thought, well, we've got a broadcast band antenna, and then we've got a UHF. We do have a bit of a notch at 141. So Doesn't really make any sense, does it? I think what I probably ought to do is actually go down a little bit and look at the lower portion. So even more bizarre, if we go down and start the display of the coverage from 50 megs and go up to about 450, we've got some other quite deep ones. So I've got one there at, ooh, what are we looking at? That's that one at 90. Let's go down a bit further. No, it doesn't reveal very much at all. The first one that's it's not even really 50. Not a little tiny resonance peak at 50 megs, well 51 actually. Then we've got that other one down here. At 90. Coming across there to the 2 meter band. One we've got what there, but it's not particularly deep. Going over here, that's the one that's about 300. 314, so useless to man or beast unless you're into military aircraft, I suppose. And then we go across here, and the deepest one we've got at 433 and a bit. So certainly UHF, and looking at the display, it's not bad at UHF, and VHF isn't quite so good. Okay, well that's an interesting one. Let's replace this with something else. Now, what is this? Well, a multi-band HF antenna. And the basic idea with this is, well, I'll screw it on. What we've got is a strange antenna. This whole section is a loading coil. So we have one long loading coil, and then it comes with a top whip that you screw in. It's very clever. Let me just do this. So we have a really strange thing. Now, the loading coil at the bottom is in sections, and each section has got a little socket. Now, the idea is you can short some of those out. You get, with the antenna, a couple of banana plugs on a short length of cable. So what you do is you jumper out different sections, so you can alter the way that the antenna performs. If you don't put any plug in whatsoever, it's supposed to be resonant at 3.5 megs in the HF band. If you connect the first one and short out that really long section, then what you end up with is an antenna that's supposed to be tuned to 7 megs. This is a bit bizarre, isn't it? So let's give it a go. So what I'll do is, if we're assuming that 3.5 is the bottom limit, so in the frequency section, let's put in 3.5 megahertz, and the top one is going to be 10 meters, so 28 megs. So let's put in 30. That'll probably be the easiest one. So I've stuck in 3 megs, and I've told it to stop looking at 30 megs. So we can see some distinct peaks again, which is exactly what we'd hoped. So yeah, sure enough, there is one at 3.5, which is what we expected to get. Now the next one up is a small peak at 14 megs. Nothing at all at 7. So if you were trying to get 7 megs with no jumper cable in, no result. So, all right, let's have a go and see what happens if we put some of these jumpers in. And if I connect in aha, well, this seems to actually be working, doesn't it? So let me just go down there. We've created a new dip, so that little resonance peak there is on 7 megs. We've still got that one a bit higher, but it does seem to have worked. So we've now made it resonant at 7 megs. Now, the next one up should be 10.1, it says. Well, this is looking quite promising, really. Oh, maybe it's not. Our new peak. We've certainly got one there at 13.5, but 10.1? Well, no, not really. Let's double check to make sure I got that right and I haven't done something silly. Wire number 3? No. Wire number 3 is supposed to be 10.1. Wire number 4 is 14 megs, the 20 meter band. Let's have a go at that. Moving up now. So here we go. Well, these are becoming a little bit more gentle. We've got a little tiny one there at 12.4, and our next big one appears to be 16 megs. So this is not really what I expected to get. Okay, let's try. What else have we got? Next one should be 18. And 20.5. Now clearly this is nearly touching some of the metalwork in the studio here, so I may well be shifting it a little bit. I don't know. What I could do is just try and adjust that top section. I mean, at the moment this one is centered on 20.5. Now if I extend that top section, I wonder if it'll bring it down enough to make a bit of a difference to the display. Let's give it a go. Yes, it does. That top element comes up an awful lot more than I thought. Probably this is going to be something for a Sharpie that you'd want to actually mark that, because that's moved it down quite a lot. I wonder if I can do it anymore. Yeah, I can, can't I? Look. So now we've got, oh yeah, look at that. So that's taken us down to 18.7, so I can see where this is going. Maybe we should backtrack one. And guess what? 13.8. So yeah, these things are pretty critical. and that puts us bang smack in the middle. Just that little adjustment back to vertical with that top section pulled as far out as it'll go. We do have a resonant antenna at 14.2 megs. So it sort of seems to be working. Yeah, okay. Right, so let's go back, do another one. I've lost track of a bit of where we are, so let's find it by trial and error. What have we got? Well, we've now got a fairly wide response here at between 20.6 and it starts to rise again at 22. So basically the 21 meg band is right in the middle of that nice little flattened section, so that's clearly working. Okay. We've now got a dip at about 24.6. What's that supposed to be? Oh, 24.9 according to the plan. That's fairly accurate, isn't it? Keep going. Oh, well, fair enough. 27.07. So that's presumably the CB band setting, and I'm guessing the one that's left. Oh, no, that's not quite what I expected. I wonder. Yeah, that last setting, a really nice one at 54 megs. What did the plan say? 50 megs? Yeah. So we've got response at 50 megs. So with those jumpers and looking at it sensibly, I think most of those peaks are actually going to be in useful places with not too much adjustment of that top section. I mean, I think it seems to be working fairly well here. Well, I was sort of a bit of a skeptic, really. I didn't expect this antenna to actually be very useful at all, but this multiple tapped coil at the bottom does appear to work. I guess the next thing to do is probably try and attach it to something out in the field and see what I can hear on it. I'll save that for another video. But this rather crazy antenna with a little jump lead set does appear to do exactly what the advert claims. It's an HF antenna that can be made to be resonant in all the HF bands, including 50 megs. So that's pretty impressive. Now, it's not a cheap antenna. I mean, I think I paid, about £130, something like that. It wasn't, you know, I bought it for myself. I haven't bought it to sell. That sort of price, I don't think it's the sort of thing that I'd want to be selling. But it's a bit unwieldy. I mean, I probably thought about putting it on the top of my van, but I think that's probably going to be not something I'd want to drive about with it on the top. Certainly not when you're driving along with the jumper cable attached. But I guess if you like field days and things like that, then this sort of thing could do the job. Slap one of these on maybe a mag mount right in the middle of your roof, and then you're going to have a pretty even polar pattern. This could actually be quite a useful antenna. I mean, we know it's resonant at these things. We just need to know whether it actually gets signals in and out of it. So that'll be the next thing for me to try. But it's pretty positive. I'm not sure about that other thing, the VHF and UHF one. And this does seem to be well, I don't know. It's sort of like useful. I don't know. I'm sure I'll find something to do with it, even if it's just like sort of just a bit of a duff test antenna that I can stick out the back. But I'm guessing that inside here is nothing but one piece of wire cut for the UHF band. I doubt it's helical now that we see that there's more response on UHF than there is on VHF. So there we go. That's enough for today, I think, folks. Make of it what you will. See you on the next video. Take care.